Hey everybody, Adam Schmela back here again. Today we are going to talk about taking the next step with workflows and actually taking the templates that you have in your library and attaching them to a contact record. So what we do if we want to actually use the workflow to quote unquote work a process, and remember workflows simply tell who's responsible for doing what, when it needs to get done, and for which client. Let's kind of reverse engineer that. So let's start with which client, and let's just stay consistent. Let's say that a client calls up and says that they need money out of their account. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that process, and I would really encourage your firm and your team to really think from this point going forward, for every request that comes in, for every process that needs to get done, how can we workflow this? What type of workflow can we use to accomplish the task at hand? So let's take one of our sample clients that we have. So let's go ahead and say we can go to, again, our recently viewed clients. Let's pull up the esteemed Mr. Homer J. Simpson. And Mr. Simpson calls in because Homer needs some funds out of one of his accounts. Now, there's two different ways in which we can attach a workflow to the contact record here. The first is if I'm at the contact record, what I can do is I can click into the workflow tabs. You can see I have 3 current active workflows. I can go and I can add a workflow from here. Now, again, from this point, the common sometimes theme is that, well, we want to link to an existing workflow because we have the workflows in the template. And that is an incorrect thinking. Linking existing workflows is going to be useful only if you already have a workflow attached to a contact record and you need to link another contact with that. So this is commonly used for husbands and wives or spouses. If you have, let's say, a distribution out of a joint account and you want that workflow to show up as an activity, or excuse me, you want that workflow to show up and be nested, if you will, under both contacts, husband and wife, that would be where you would link an existing workflow. But if we're starting from scratch, we're going to be basically making a copy of the templates that we have in our library and attaching a copy of that workflow to the actual contact record. So the first place to do that is we would click on Create New Workflow, and a pop-up would come up. We can select the template, etc. The other way in which you can always attach a workflow to a contact record is by using the omnipresent Quick Add feature within the Redtail CRM. We can click on Quick Add, and again, from here, wherever you're at in the CRM, these 7 opportunities or these 7 functions pop up. The last one, as you see here, is the ability to attach a new workflow. So I can go within the contact record. You'll see that it's automatically attached to Homer Simpson. I can select the template. Same functionality as over here, but I'm just doing it in a different spot. Another quick aside on the Quick Add feature, if I'm anywhere in the CRM, let's say I'm at the home page and Homer calls in and I want to attach it with him on the horn, what I can do is I can just do Quick Add. I can go process from here. Now you'll notice that the contact name is blank, so all I'd have to do is just search for Homer. His name's going to pop up, and I can attach the workflow, same thing. So those are the 2 different places in which you can assign that contact record to a workflow, or I should say attach a workflow and make a copy of a workflow template and attach it to the client record. So let's go ahead and do that here. Let's say that, again, Homer calls in and needs money out of his account. Let's say he needs $10,000 after taxes out of his account. So office manager takes a phone call. What's going to happen is we're going to go ahead and select that workflow template. So it's a client that's a client account service request, so that we know the workflow is going to be nested somewhere in this section, if you will, of our workflow templates. It is a distribution from a brokerage account, and you'll get to know these workflows, how they're named and where they're at as you become more familiar. And again, this is why we encourage you, as you're working on customizing your own workflows from our templates, is to rename them and put that number in front of them, because that will automatically punt all of your workflows to the very top of your list. So you'll be able to see all the ones that you're working on. All of ours will be nested underneath, and then any inactive ones that you put, remember, we told you to go ahead and make them inactive, because they won't even show up on this list. And then if they are active, but you really just don't want to use them, put a ZZ in front of that, and they will automatically be moved to the bottom. So just another quick reminder about that. Now, back to the task at hand. So we're going to select distribution from a brokerage account. If I click this, from this point forward, and this is an important point to understand and emphasize. Remember, I said throughout the course of these trainings, there's going to be a couple of key points that I'll ask you to just really hang on to and remember. This is one of them. Everything that I do from this point forward, from this field forward, does not affect the workflow templates that I've created. Let me say that again. What workflow is, or let me say it in a different way. What Redtail is doing from this point forward, it is taking the template that's in the database and it's essentially making a copy of that workflow and attaching it to the contact record. So everything that I do from this point forward, and this is one of the best practices that we recommend, is you can modify, you can change, you can delete, you can add to the workflow, and it does not affect this template that we drew from, right? This template that we're making a copy from. So let's say, and this is typically what we'll do in our office, is we'll leave client account service the same, distribution from brokerage account. We know it's a brokerage account, so this is where, and every firm's different, but what we'll do is we'll say the name of the account. So Homer's, or we'll just say maybe from IRA. We don't have to say the name because, again, the name is going to be attached to the contact record. And then what we would do is we would maybe put the account number in here. This is, if anybody from Redtail watches this by chance, this is where what I really wish would be a feature and function is the ability to attach an account to an active workflow. That would negate the need for having to attach the account number to the workflow or write it in manually. So what we do is we would just say, let's say this is an account at TD Ameritrade. I'm just making up account numbers here. So we would just type that in here. That way, again, as we're working the workflow, we're being able to see and reference, okay, this is the account number. If I have TD Ameritrade open up on the other screen, I can just cross-check and verify. This is typically what we'll do. Rename it slightly. We still want to know what it is. We still want to know that it's a distribution, and we want to know, okay, it's from an IRA, so we need to be cognizant of taxes, and then just have the account number in there for a reference point. The owner is not something that has a pivotal role in the actual functionality of the workflow so much as it does being able to pull an activity report for each individual in your office to kind of see who's doing what. The owner of the workflow is basically what I would consider to be air traffic control. They're just kind of overseeing everything, making sure that everybody's getting done. And to the extent that you have notifications set, let me punt over there real quick. So notifications on your workflows, if we go to manage your account, we go to site preferences, and we scroll down to notifications. You'll see right here, everything is defaulted yes. And you'll notice basically everything from this point forward is notifications to be notified when workflows are anything that you see listed here, right? Assigned, updated, completed. And you'll notice that these are as the owner. So even though you may not be doing anything in the workflow, let's say the office manager is the owner and you may have additional support staff that are going to be the actual users that are going to be, or the attendees here that are going to be doing things. If you assign someone in your firm as the owner and they have notifications set up, they're going to get notified when things are done based off of the rules here. My best practice, I would take away and change to no anything that's been updated. I would also change this to no as well when it's been updated, just because our email inboxes are busy enough. If you do insist on having notifications sent via your email because you kind of live in your inbox, what I would recommend doing if you're using Outlook or Gmail is to go ahead and create a rule in your inbox that says anytime an email is received from notifications at redtailtechnology.com. So I'll type that in again up here just so that you have it. Notifications at Redtail. So that's the email address that all notifications from workflows are going to come from. Create a rule in Outlook that says if an email is received from this email address, then you move it to a separate folder, because very quickly, especially as you're learning how these workflows work and as you start updating workflows, every time you update a task, every time you reassign it to someone, every time you do something in a workflow, someone's going to get an email notification that can very quickly overwhelm an inbox. So again, just another quick aside. Now, back to regularly scheduled programming. We come over here now, so owner. Again, this is typically going to be the person that's responsible for seeing this task through and through. So if it's client service related, that's typically going to be someone on the team. And again, you'll notice one thing here, that the owner, you cannot assign a role as an owner. Someone, an actual user or team needs to be assigned to it. Roles only apply at the task level. So we can go ahead and let's say this is going to be team client service. It is cashiering, and I'll emphasize the importance of utilizing cashiering and categories as we get into the reporting video. The target date, this is going to be an important feature of workflows. You'll notice that every one of our workflows, we have a cheat sheet at the bottom that tells you when you should assign the target date based off how the workflow was written. So we tell you here that the target date is the start of the workflow. So we'll say that's today. and we go ahead and create the workflow. Now, what Redtail does again is it makes a copy of the workflow template it makes a copy of that workflow template in the database and attaches it to the client record. So everything that I'm doing from this point forward does not modify the template. So we see we have this workflow. Let's open this up and see how workflows are laid out, again, once it's attached to a contact record. Now, you'll notice, again, the assigned to, yours should not be looking like this. Your assigned tos, if you're doing it correctly and you follow the homework from the last video, by the time you're actually attaching a workflow to a contact record, the assigned tos should already be filled in the templates so that this automatically is assigned to the individuals in your firm. So we can basically see the high-level overview of how the workflow is written. Again, steps, tasks, and outcomes. So we have a multitude of different steps. We have task or tasks in each step, and then again we have our outcomes. And to view outcomes, we simply click on the down caret there, and click on View Outcomes, and we can get the gist of it right here. So this is an important point to emphasize how our workflows are written and why they're beneficial, and how we make them beneficial. So again, workflows tell who's responsible for doing what, when it needs to get done, and for which client. With an added caveat is we want to be able to document what has happened in a time-stamped, uneditable, and compliant manner. And the only way in which you can do that within workflows, you'll notice that we have a little step notes button up here, that this is right now blank. Anything in blue and red-tailed tailwag, again, is going to be a hyperlink where we can click and do something. Okay. You'll notice that this is blank. The only way that you can document anything in step notes is if you actually complete a step. And this speaks to the philosophy of how our workflows are written. You will find more of our workflows have more steps than they do tasks. And what I mean by that is you will find very few of our workflows have only a few steps and multiple different tasks in each step. Most of our workflows will have 3 or less tasks. A lot of our workflows will only have 1 task in each step. And the reason for that is in the way Redtail is written and how it works to actually document notes. So you'll notice that the first step here is, and let me just demonstrate this to kind of hammer the point home. You'll notice that the first step here is to provide details of the distribution. So first step is, and let's say that those are both assigned to me, just to make it easy here. So anytime you want to see the details of what this task is, we can hover over it. So provide details. Again, we want to provide amount needed, if it's from a retirement account, tax withholding percentages, and delivery method. So this is where, if you remember in one of the earlier videos, workflows are written so it is, in a sense, a working, breathing standard operating procedure. So I know what I need to do to complete this step, and I know what I need to do for review of account permissions. Do we have the authority to move money in and out of the account? Do we need paperwork, checks going to different address of record, etc.? So here's kind of my checklist, if you will, of things that I need to get done in order to get the next step. However, what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to think about utilizing the task here and the details in here. So if I go to edit task, I can go ahead and modify the details right here and all the verbiage that's in here. I want to encourage you to not document what has happened. So any notes or any additional information. So for example, what I don't want you to do is, okay, provide details of distribution. I could go down here, create client. Wait for me there. Client needs 10,000 from account, et cetera, et cetera. I do not want you to get into the habit of doing this for 2 very, very specific reasons. Number one, this is not able to be searched. It's not able to be viewed directly unless you were to actually A, come into the workflow and hover over it, or B, open up the actual task and view it as I'm viewing right now. Number 2, and this is more important, is that this is completely editable. So even if I were to update the task and then I were to complete that task, even by doing that, what I'm able to do is I can still come in here, I can edit the task, I can go in, I can start typing things, I can update the task, and we'll see that it's still in there, even though it's been completed. So there really isn't a checks and balance to make sure that what has been done has actually been done, and that we have any type of audit trail to see who's done what and when they did it. So that's the second and most important reason why I would discourage you from documenting the history of what's happened in the actual field of the details with the description within a task. Rather, what I want you to think about doing is utilizing the complete step function and use that to document notes. So in order to complete the step, you either have to have it be the last task in that step be completed, or, and again, this is one of the ways in which Redtail is just functioning. You'll notice that I can complete and I can uncomplete the step without really any history or documentation of that being done. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the way the system's written. However, if I have multiple open tasks here, what I can do is I can go ahead and complete the step. When I click on that, I get a pop-up that comes down, and now I have to select an outcome. What happened? What do I want to have happen? If you remember from one of my earlier videos, I mentioned don't focus so much on the beginning part of the outcome. Focus on what you want the workflow to do in the next step. So this could say went to Hawaii and partied. If I want the workflow to go to a waiting form and advisor evaluates portfolio, I don't care what's in the beginning part here. So don't be focused and don't be myopic and just focus on that. Make sure that you're focusing more on what you want the workflow to do. If I go to this point, and now by default, by me clicking on complete step over here with 2 open tasks, if I actually go ahead and complete step, that will, in essence, complete both of the tasks and move the workflow to the next step in the process, again, based off the outcome selected. So let's say that at this point, I've talked to Homer. Homer needs $10,000 out of his account, out of this account number, and he needs $2,000 withheld for taxes. Okay. So what we would do that in federal taxes, that turns into a, let's do some math, gross distribution of $12,000. So what I'm going to do is, because I want that data to A, be front, center, and visible, and B, I want it to be time-stamped, uneditable, and compliant, what I'm going to do is I'm going to review and accomplish both of these tasks independently, but then I'm actually going to document what happened in the completion of these steps. So let me just do this. Okay, I'm playing practice manager here, determine if the evaluator has authority. I'm pulling up TD Ameritrade. I'm viewing that we have bank account information on file, et cetera, et cetera. Great, that's all done. We have everything on file. Now, okay, provide details of distribution. So we know that, all right, so I wanted to, now watch what happens when I click on complete. Because it's the last task in the process, I automatically get the complete step box that pops up here, and it gives me the opportunity to document notes. So if we, for example, all details are provided and this is kind of the path of least resistance. All details received, IGO, bank account on file, cash is available. So what this means, we don't need any paperwork. Cash is available in the account. We can skip, if you'll notice. So the next step in this process distribution through online platform, all the way down here. What we have done is this is the beauty of workflows. If all of these things are done, then we can do this. And so because everything was done, we can skip these 3 steps here and go right down into the process distribution. Now, what happens if, let's say we call up Homer, or let's say Homer calls the office and says, I need $10,000 out of my account. And to which you respond, being that it's coming out of the IRA, we say, how much would you like withheld for taxes? And Homer says, I don't know. I need to call my CPA and I'll give you guys a call back. Great. What we can do is we can still document that we have some information, but we need additional details. So let's do that right now, just to illustrate the point of how doing this can allow the history, the life history of a workflow live in perpetuity in the workflow. So let's just document this here real quick. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to complete the step and watch what happens. Number one, the workflow recycles on the exact same step. So remember in the very beginning, I talked about the different components of workflows, and that outcomes allow the workflow to progress, regress, or keep the workflow on the same step. I'm doing that right here. I kept the workflow on the same step, but I did one very important thing. I now created a conversation history. I can now say who did what, when did it get done, and we know for which client. And so now what I can do, and this speaks to the functionality, to the in a sense living, breathing document or living, breathing entity of workflows. So you'll notice that this was today's date. It's Thursday today, Thursday, March 28th. Let's say that, again, I want to make sure that Homer gets his money. Let's say that life happens and Homer forgets to call back in. So I want to create a trigger. I want to create something on my to-do list that prompts me to call Homer back and make sure that we get this information. So what I can do in this, what I'm doing right here, I want you to think of as a theme and as a best practice applicable across the board to all workflows. Is I can now, with a few clicks of a mouse, I can use this as a living, breathing to-do list. So what I can do is I can say, you know what? Okay, I want to say it's due today, but I want to punt this out to the 1st. I want to make sure that I follow up with Homer on the 1st of April, just to make sure we get that information. In all honesty, I really don't care about this one because technically I've done this. I can even go ahead and complete it in here just to get it off the screen. So we're waiting to get that information. Now, if I look at my to-do list, let's keep this here. Let me open up one more tab. And I want to look at my to-do list. If I were to fast forward out to Monday, that task would show up on my workflow tasks to do today. So it's a way to keep the things that are in the most, keep the main thing. If we're keeping client service the main thing and we want to make sure that all of the important tasks show up on our to-do list when they need to get done, doing that little simple trick there of recycling a workflow task or recycling a workflow step, documenting what had happened and then advancing out the due date of when we need to follow up so that it shows up and stares at us front center each day. It's right there. Inadvertently, or I shouldn't say inadvertently, but I can also get that information. If I go to my active workflow tasks, you'll see that down here with a due date of April 1st. So this is kind of my high level overview, 30,000 foot view of everything that I have to do. You'll notice the emphasis on my workflow tasks, but everything that I need to do is going to be there. This task will show up on my dashboard on the 1st. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and I can just click on, let's say, okay, we get that information back. Homer asks that. So again, we have all the information, all details received. I go in good order, bank account information on file, cash is available in the account. Now, let's say that all details provided, but cash needs to be raised. So there's not enough cash to process the distribution. Now what's going to happen is when I complete the step, we'll notice that it punts down to the 3rd step because now what we have to do is the advisor, the licensed advisor for this client needs to free up cash. And so what's going to happen, you'll see that the due date automatically prompts me to view it on the 30th. Now, as the practice manager, as the person that just completed this, I can go ahead and do some heavy lifting right here. Let's say that time is of the essence. I can quickly adjust the due date. Remember, I can always overwrite the rules of the workflow and not have it affect anything downline. So I can go ahead and let's say I want Adam. If I'm the practice manager and I want Adam, the advisor, to do this, I can go ahead and update task to have that be done tomorrow. Again, today's the 28th, tomorrow. So when advisor Adam logs into Redtail in the morning, he's going to see on his to-do list that I'm going to have to update, or I'm going to have to process trades. And as an advisor, again, I haven't been involved in the beginning part of this conversation because candidly, I shouldn't be involved in this. The advisor should not be focused on these type of client service activities, but he still needs to be informed and understand what needs to be done. So Adam comes in on the 29th tomorrow and says, well, what do we need trades for? Let's see. Oh, I can pull up the history here. This is a phrase that I use is that workflows allow teams to independently collaborate. Everybody can do their own thing when they need to do their own thing for each individual client and contact record, but it allows from a team management approach, it allows everybody to collaborate together because we have the ability to view that information. And what I want you to think about is if it's not documented in workflows, it did not happen. That's a common theme that I really want to hammer home. If it didn't happen, and if it's not in Redtail, specifically in workflows, but candidly, just in general, if it's not documented in Redtail, I want you to think that it did not happen. And so what I'm going to do from this point forward is I'm just going to work the workflow. I'm going to complete the steps, document what has happened, and make sure that I force the workflow to do what I need it to do. So if we just continue this through the life cycle, we have a couple of different options, right? If we have paperwork signed and in good order. Let's say we don't have discretion on the account and there's no online trading and we need an actual form. Great, we have to get a form. But in this case, let's say that we do have discretion and we do have trading authority, trades placed, and move money authorization on file. No paperwork needed. Great, let's process the distribution through the online platform. Right? I'm always a big fan, even if it's the smallest thing. I'm always a fan of just documenting something in the note step, or something in the note as you complete a step, just to document it. Again, just to fill everybody else in the team on as to what was done. So we can go ahead and complete step. And if my internet would work a little faster here. Let's try that again. So again, we can either confirm the distribution or distribution not completed. We can troubleshoot why. Again, we notice that we'd stay on the same step. And this gives us the opportunity to just document what happened. Document your troubleshooting, what happened, wrong bank account on file, signature authorization required, whatever it may be. Distribution not completed, troubleshoot why. Great. Let's just document what went wrong, what happened, what did we do to fix it, and then wait until, and again, let's say that we did that. Let's say it's wrong bank account on file. And then we just go ahead and complete the step. You'll notice that again, it will recycle on this same step. Now that we get the right information on file, and again, this is something that would happen in time, right? So we would make sure that we'd advance it out. So this happened on the 29th. Let's say that it would take 2 business days for bank account information to get on file. So we're going to advance the due date of this task out. So on the 2nd, I'm going to come back in here, or whoever that's assigned to. Again, I'll just default to me, but it would be already assigned to whoever on your team is going to be responsible for doing this task. It would show up on that day on their to-do list. They go in here, complete step. And we would just document through the life cycle of this process. At the end of the day, what ends up happening, if we go back to the contact record and we go into the workflows, once everything is completed, you're going to have your list of completed workflows, and this list will grow and grow and grow as you do more and more things for clients through workflows. And what you're able to do, if you click into one of these completed workflows, everything has been completed. You can see when it was done. You can see, in addition, who did what and when they did it by clicking on the step notes. So this is time-stamped, uneditable, compliant. It lives in the contact history, and you will be able to see what has happened for this client by clicking on notes. And you can see that information here. I can click into this workflow. Once workflows are completed, they become notes. And again, they're time-stamped, able to be found in the workflow. So this video, I know it was long. I hope it gave you a good feeling and understanding as to the methodology and philosophy behind how workflows were written and how you can go ahead and use them. The next video that we're going to talk about is how to modify different components of the workflows to get them to work to the way that your firm does business. But I did want to spend this time to make sure that you understood how they're written, how you can best use them, because a lot of what you're going to need to modify is going to be more in cosmetics in nature and not necessarily from a functionality standpoint. Thanks so much, and we'll catch you in the next video.